Hello, dear learners. Welcome to teaching learning session of Sociology. In today's session, we discuss about the environmental movements in India, Block 4 of Environmental Sociology. In this block, we discuss about forest movements, about water movements, and the seed movement in India. What are social movements? Before we start with our topic, it is very important to understand what is social movement. Social movement can be taken as a collective action with some continuity to promote or to resist changes in the society or group of which it is a part. As per Turner and Killen, social movement can be taken as a collective acting with some continuity to promote or resist a change in the society or group of which it is a part. That is resistance by a group or resistance by a society, a people or a community people towards the changes. They resist the changes they resist the changes that is known as the social movements. There are two types of social movements, the traditional social movements and the new social movements. There are a few differences between the traditional and the new social movements. The older or the traditional social movement are especially related with the working class or of the laborers, right? These traditional labors are associated with the labor movements, right? These are the labor type of the movements, and it is significantly different from the new form of a social movement. How they are different? They are the traditional movement and the new social movements are different in their goals. They are different in their organizational structures. They are different in action and mark a distinction. These new social movements act differently. They are different from the traditional movements in terms of their action. So these few aspects on which we can distinguish the traditional movements and the new social movements. That is on the basis of the action, on the basis of the goals, or on the basis of the organizational structure. The traditional form of movement are supposed to be centered around the working class, going towards the economic redistribution. We all have seen the class conflicts and all those things. That is the theories of Marx. The theories of Marx are related to working class movements. So the traditional movements supposed to be centered around the working classes, and these movements are towards the economic redistributions, while the new social movements are an indicative of a shift towards the post-industrial economy, and it is instrumentally very different from the working class movement. So, working class movement or the traditional movements were the industrial. It was towards the industrial economy, and the new traditional movements or the new social movements. These movements are shift towards the post-industrial economy. Traditional movements are supposed to be centered around the working class, right? While these new social movements, they are not centered around the working class only. There are many other aspects like environmental issues. The new traditional movement claim that instead of being Under guided by utilitarian issues, they are more concerned about the qualitative aspects, such as the quality of life and the ways of augmenting the life chances. Traditional movements were these traditional movements were centered around the working class. It is about the redistribution of the economy or the resources, and these are associated with the traditional social movements were associated with the utilitarian issues, while the new social movements are more concerned rather than the utilitarian issues. They are more concerned with the qualitative issues like the quality of life. One should live a life qualitatively. It should be we should give them the better working environment, better environment in which they can grow, and it is associated way of augmenting their life chances. So this new movement, new social movements are basically associated with the qualitative aspects of life rather than the utilitarian aspects or the issues, while the traditional movements were associated with the traditional issues. These new social movements show a marked assert their claim voraciously, thus politicizing the otherwise apolitical areas of the movement. There is a difference. There is another difference between the traditional social movement and the new social movement, right? These new social movement assert their claims voraciously with politicizing. They politicized their issues. Politics plays an important role in new traditional movement, while and on the other side, in the traditional movements were apolitical. The traditional movements were apolitical, while politics plays an important role in new social movements. The assertion of identity is kept in vanguard in all such movements. The self reflexive character, which presupposes that the participants of the movement are always questioning the goals, strategies, and the outcome of the movement. In new social movements, the new social movements have a self-reflexive character. What is the self-reflexive character? Self-reflexive character is that where the participants of the movement always question about the goals, about the strategies, how they will achieve their goals, and the outcome of the movement. Nothing taken as a final and absolute, but all moments of a movement are reviewed and screened to bring out the best. So they always questions about their goals. They always question about the new social movement. The participants always question about the strategies to achieve their goals, how they will achieve their goals, and they question about the outcome of the movements. And there is nothing full and final and absolute in these movements. The all moments of a movement are reviewed and screened to bring out the best. So they keep eye on every moment of the movement, and they always review the moments of the movement so that they can bring out their best, so that they can achieve their goals easily. Forest based movement, as at the beginning I told you, we'll discuss the forest based movement, and one of the most important forest based movement is the chipko andolan. Forest based movement, uh, there has been always a tension between the safeguarding the rights of marginal people and the spearheading. the industrial and commercial development in the country. The rift always exists between the marginal people and the industrial and the commercial development of the country. We have discussed all these things in our earlier sessions. Why there is a rift? Because the marginal people often found themselves at the receiving ends and struggled hard to rescue themselves from such forceful state sponsored intrusions over the resources that they believed belonged to them. These marginal people on the name of, for the sake of the development in the country, these marginal people always found themselves at the receiving end, and they struggled a lot to rescue themselves from such forceful state sponsored intrusions. These state-sponsored intrusions on the name of the development, they take the resources of marginal people. The marginal people believe that the forest and the resources of the forest belongs to them, and they always the marginal people always feel that the state sponsored intrusion snatch their resources, the forest resources from them. So they always the cases of clashes between the state and marginal people always occurs. Chipko Andolan started in Uttarakhand. Right. Uttarakhand, let us discuss the geography of Uttarakhand first. Uttarakhand comprises of eight hill district, that is Pauri, Chamoli, Tehri, Uttarkashi, Dehradun, Almora, Pithoragarh, and Nainital. These are the eight districts of Uttarakhand. The first five district, that is the Pauri, Chamoli, Tehri, Uttarkashi, and Dehradun, these constitutes the Garhwal, while the last three form the Kumaon, that is the Dehradun, Almora, and Pithoragarh and Nainital. These forms the Kumaon. Uh, British forces which took over the Garhwali region, while the custody of Kumaon was rested upon the son of the last Garhwali ruler. Uttarakhand is comprises of the eight hill district, and it is divided into two. That is the Garhwal and the Kumaon. So Garhwali region and the Kumaon region. The British took over the Garhwal region, while the Kumaon region was handed over to the son of the last Garhwali ruler. And the Chipko movement actually flourished from the rich cultural legacy that community wove over the years. The Chipko movement was peaceful one, and that it traversed the lines of non-violence to protest the wrong done on the people of the hills, is an exemplary instance of how the culture of community impacts the form of public resistance. As a Kumaon district was taken over by the Britishers, and they started exploiting the resources of the Kumaon. The Kumaon, there were the dense forests in the Kumaon, and on the name of the development, these British rulers started exploiting the resources, the forest resources of the Kumaon district, and these Kumaon people or the people of the Uttarakhand, they are very much attached with their forest and the resources of the forest, and their culture is like they always pray. They consider the forest and the as sacred, and they worship the forest, while these Britishers started cutting down the trees and exploiting the resources of the forest, and this impacted the people of the Uttarakhand, and As per their culture, they consider the forest as sacred, and when someone hurts your feelings, emotions, people usually resist, and this happened in Uttarakhand, right? Because the culture, because the Uttarakhand culture is very rich, and this Chipko movement was a non-violence protest, and they protested. This protest started against the wrong policies of the Britishers on the people of the hills, right? And because of their culture, because of their sentiments, because of the emotions of the Uttarakhand people, they started resisting the policies of the Britishers or of the state. People of Kumaon Hill or Kumaon district assimilated together to celebrate their religious and social functions, and thereby showed the strong tendencies for osmosis or interaction. This in turn generated a sense of a fellow feeling or togetherness, a strong character of community life, observed a primary relationships. The people of all five districts, they are associated with each other, they are intermingled with each other, they celebrate their religious and social function together. There is a solidarity between the people of this Garhwal region, right? And because of this solidarity, they were able to resist the policies of the state of that time. This Chipko Andolan was actually a silent form of protest movement waged by the people of Garhwal. This Andolan was a way of opposing the unfair policies implemented by the monarch of the state. The acts were meant to punish the corrupt official who thought of reaping the benefits by occurring upon the mass harmful policies. This Chipko Andolan was a silent form of a silent type of a protest. People started opposing or started resisting the corrupt official or the policies made by these corrupt officials, which actually harming the livelihood, the culture of the Uttarakhand people. The Chipko movement largely meant embracing the trees to protest their illicit felling. The colonial forces triggered the change in the forest ecology that was solely piling up discontent in the minds of the hills people. Actually, when the Britishers took over the Kumaon region, they started cutting the trees, or they started the process of deforestation. And this harming the forest ecology, this policy of harming the forest ecology, this started a discontent in the minds of the hill people or the Kamau people, and now they started embellishing the trees so that they can save the trees from. Actually, a special mention must be made on laying on the railways of 1853 and Sepoy Mutiny in 1857. This started this Chipko Andolan, or this Chipko movement gained a momentum in 1853, and the two reasons were that is the laying of the railways in 1853 and the Sepoy Mutiny in 1857. These were the two reasons because of which this Chipko movement or the Chipko Andolan started aggressively. The colonial intervention ensured massive transportation of goods and cargo, called for the construction of the railways. Once the laying of railway lines started, the large logs of woods were needed, for which a huge trees were brutally slaughtered. And the name of the development, right, to make the coaches or to make the railway, to make the on the name of the development, or on the name of the development, while they were laying the railways, Britishers were laying the railway lines. They slaughtered thousands of trees brutally on the name of the development for the constructions of the railways. And it started in 1853, and the felling of the trees took a drastic form once the Sepoy Mutiny had started. And the felling of the trees, I'm sorry, the felling of the trees took a drastic form once the Sepoy Mutiny started in 1853 on the name of the development. While the Britishers were laying the railway lines, they slaughtered thousands of trees. In 1857, during the Sepoy Mutiny, the trees were slaughtered drastically. And this meant that the British forces felt that more railways were needed to transport troops to quell the revolt. In 1853, when there was a process of the drastic destruction of the forest, people started revolting against the policies of the Britishers. And to quell down this revolt, they the Britishers felt that more troops of army and police should be there to quell the revolts. And this created a pressure on the trees that were bluntly cut down to build not just the railway sleeper but also to power fed the railways. So for the transportation, railways are needed. So on the name of the development, or to make the sleepers. To make the railway sleepers, and not only to make the railway sleepers, but also the power. But these trees also power fed the railways. They were used as a fuel. Trees, the wood has been used as a fuel to run the railways. For all these, the trees were cut down drastically. And after Anglo-Nepalese Treaty in 1815, which Garhwal was transferred to its monarch, Tehri Raja's son, who in turn leased the large tract of trees to the British Empire. In 1815, as we all know that there was a treaty between the this Garhwali ruler and the Nepalese in 18 and the Nepalese in 1859. And this was after this Anglo-Nepalese treaty of 1815. Garhwal was transferred to its monarch, and the Tehri Raja's son, who in turn leased the large tract of trees to the British Empire, and the son of the Raja, Tehri Raja, he handed over the lease of large trees to the British Empire, and British started deforesting the Garhwal district. This complicity between the state and the imperial forces kept no leaves unturned to deprive its people of natural forest products. When the British Empire or the British ruler gained the ownership on the resources, they deprived the marginal people, or the people of the Uttarakhand or the Garhwal, to deprive from the natural forest products. And this was one of the reasons for discontention among the people of Uttarakhand. With the declining forest, gathering timbers, fruits, and berries become an ardent jobs, and since most often women were entrusted with these primary tasks, deforestation meant making their life hassle but clubbed with unending drudgery. All these were enabled by the scientific forest management. These forests were handed over by the ruler of the Garhwal, or ruler of the Uttarakhand, to the Britishers, and Britishers deprived the people from using the resources of the forest, and this has been done by the scientific forest management. And Legalis ensured that the policy of the legalis ensured that the policies for the forest be crafted in a way so that uh, the ways are to absorb the forest resources by the depriving the common masses be rectified in a way that become unquestionable. All this has been done by the forest management, and the forest management made the policies or the rules like that they can deprive the people of the forest or people of the Uttarakhand or the common masses of the Uttarakhand from they can deprive the common masses of the Uttarakhand from the resources of the forest in a way that no one can question the state. They made the laws like that. The smooth and tranquil life being trespassed by an alien law become a cauldron of boiling fumes. And this policy or this legal aspect which deprived the masses from the resources played an important role in forest movement during Chipko Andolan. And the situation was soon going out of control, and it turned violent in December 27, 1906, when 200 villagers attacked the forest officer camping in Tehri. Chipko Andolan was a non-violent type of a movement before December 27, 1906, but in December 27, 1906, this movement, this Chipko movement turned violent. How it turned violent, the 200 people of, or the 200 villagers attacked the forest officer in Tehri district, and the violence refused to pull up and reappeared once again in 1907 when the erstwhile forest officer of Tehri, Sadanand Gaurila, was rocked up with in Khandugi. So again in 1907, another officer, forest officer of Tehri, was again attacked by the villagers. During this time, the king Kirti Shah immediately rushed to the spot to pacify the angry mob, and the Chipko movement soon shredded off its violence and go down to the path of peaceful resistance once again after 1907. In 1930, the Garhwal initiated their non-cooperation movement, centering decisively around the agenda of forest and its riches. The king of Tehri, who was detouring Europe at that time, asked his Diwan, uh, Chakradhar Jayal, to repel the movement with forces and armed repression. Several unarmed Satyagrahi workers died while crossing the Yamuna River. In 1930, this was again an important moment of Chipko Andolan. In 1930, these protesters started the non-cooperation movement, right? That was it was because of the forest. It is related with the forest and its resources, and they started a non-cooperation movement with the state. And the king of that time, the king of the Tehri, was not there, and he handled on the order of the king. This movement was handled forcefully, and the army and the armed forces tried to armed forces were used to repress this movement, and the several unarmed Satyagrahi workers died while crossing the Yamuna river. There was again a bloodshed in 1930 during this in this movement, and the movement gained momentum from anti-colonial struggle that were promoting the British enslaved India at that point of time. And at that point of time, while many Satyagrahi died because of this violence, because of this repression from the state, this played an important role, and the struggle get a momentum again. The Chipko movement was an important junction of Indian independence movement, which greatly entrusted or they demanded for the democracy of the Garhwal. And the Sundar Bahuguna played an important role in Chipko Andolan. So Chipko Andolan is basically a a violent type of a protest. And in 1916 and in 1907, somehow it became a violent type of a protest. Then again, it reverted back to the non-violent type of a protest, while in 1930 there was a bloodshed, and it was from the state side that they tried to repress the revoltees, and around 200 people died in this repression. A water based movement, Narmada movement. In post-independent India, dams were proudly proclaimed as the temples of modern India. It was thought that the dams would help connect the rural agricultural economy with its urban industrial counterparts. The goal or the vision behind the construction of the dams was that these dams were help to connect the rural agricultural economy. These dams were the rural economy or the fields or the agricultural fields will get the water because of these dams, and they can compete with their urban industrial counterparts, and it will these dams will help to connect the rural economy with the urban economy, industrial economy. Right from as long as 1980s, the public investment made on the large dams in India had been marred with controversies, and the Sardar Sarovar project had been subject of prolonged controversies that rocked the whole nation. Um, since 1918, these constructions of dam or the investments of public money in construction of the dam has been a subject of controversies. But the Sardar Sarovar project, particularly this project, has been a subject of a prolonged controversy in the whole nation. The Sardar Sarovar project on the river Narmada was probably one of the mightiest and the most expensive multi-purpose river valley project to be executed in India. It is one of the most important and the most expensive multi-purpose river projects. The river is jointly shared by the Gujarat, Rajasthan, and the Madhya Pradesh, and therefore the conflict surrounded the project right from very inception. Now, um, this Narmada river is jointly shared by the three states, and so the conflict. This project has been surrounded with the conflict since the inception. It was expected that the dam would irrigate a large tract of around 1.8 million hectares of land in Gujarat and Rajasthan, and would supply drinking water to over 40 million people of the region. And the dam would have installed capacity of producing around 1450 watts of hydroelectricity for the coming 30 years. The dam therefore took off with big promises and resolutions, which were hard to be kept. So, when the goal or the vision behind this project is that this would help, this dam or this project will help to irrigate a large tract around 1 million hectares of the land in Gujarat and Rajasthan, and it will supply the drinking water to 40 million people. And around 1450 watts of hydroelectricity will be produced from this dam. But these promises were and the promises and resolutions were hard to keep. Locating the Narmada, let us discuss about this Narmada river first. The river Narmada originates from the Amarkantak in Maikal range, situated in Shadol district of Madhya Pradesh. So, Narmada originated from the Amarkantak in Shadol district of Madhya Pradesh, and the altitude of river bed here is in Shadol is 1051 meters, and the total catchment area of river is almost 98,796.8 square kilometer, comprises of Maikal range in the east, Vindhya range of the north, and the Satpura range of the south. So the catchment area of river is very much, it is around 98,796.8 square kilometer in east, north, and the south. The river crawls down the following district of Shadol, Mandala, Jabalpur, Narsinghpur, Hoshangabad, Khandwa, Khargone, district of MP. So this river crawls from these districts in MP. Then the river form a formidable boundaries between the Jhabua district of MP and the Dhulia district in Maharashtra and Baroda Bharuch district in Gujarat. So this Narmada flows from Bihar, from Maharashtra, Gujarat, and MP. Traversing through Bharuch district, the river terminates in the Gulf of Cambay. Narmada River is essentially an interstate resource which is shared by three neighboring but continuous states that make it difficult to reach an unanimous decision. As this river flows from the or the resources of this river has been shared by the three states, and because of the sharing of the resources of the river by the three states, it was difficult to reach to the unanimous decision. The river has a total length of 1312 kilometer and a basin area of total 98,800 kilometer that constituted about 88% of Madhya Pradesh, 2% in Maharashtra, and 10% in Gujarat. Gujarat proposed its idea to build a dam before the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal in 1969. So it was the proposal of the Gujarat. It was proposed by the Gujarat of building a dam, and this was before the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal in 1969. The state claimed that the dam would build up a corpus of surplus water that could be supplied to the improvised area, besides providing clean drinking water, irrigation, and electricity. Challenging the proposal, Medha Patkar organized a 36 days march, and this march was a symbol of solidarity among the neighboring state of Narmada Valley, as well as a direct challenge to the government and the World Bank. Gujarat proposes the construction of a dam over Narmada River, and the Medha Patkar resisted this proposal and challenged this proposal, and she organized a 36-day march, and this was a symbol of solidarity among the neighboring state, and this march was a direct challenge to the government of India and the World Bank, because World Bank was sponsoring this project. She was shocked at the magnitude of displacement and therefore founded the Narmada Charangrast Samiti NCS On the name of the development, or why this Narmada, this proposal was given by the Gujarat of the construction of the dam, when they estimated about the displacement, the magnitude of displacement was very much, and Medha Patkar was shocked at the magnitude of displacement, and by this magnitude of displacement, to resist this project, she formed NCS. She founded NCS, that is the Narmada Charangrast Samiti, which finally developed into Narmada Bachao Andolan in a collaboration of NCS with Gandhian organization in state of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. And finally, this NCS developed the Narmada Bachao Andolan in a state of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. In 1993, in association with Environmental Defense Fund and the International Rivers Network, the Narmada Bachao Andolan compelled the World Bank to suspend the proposed fund for the dam. This Narmada Bachao Andolan uh, associated with the Environmental Defense Fund and the International River Network, and these together in 1993 compelled the World Bank to suspend the proposed funds for the construction of the dam. In 1995, the Supreme Court was persuaded to delay the construction process till the further review of rehabilitation process has been done. In 1993, this World Bank has suspended the proposed funds to the dam. In 1995, Supreme Court delayed the construction till further they reviewed the rehabilitation process been done. Assessing the impact of Sardar Sarovar project on ecology and social environment. In the last decade, Gujarat had destroyed a major chunk of the forest wealth of the exploited tribal areas, right from Danta state in north to Dang in the south. So in Gujarat, there was a major destruction of the forest wealth from Danta to Dang. And according to the reports of the principal of the Forest Rangers College at Rajpipla between 1970s and 1990, the forest which extended west of Rajpipla had been decimated systematically, and the systematic and organized forest felling had led to recession of the forest area about 60 kilometers to the east of Rajpipla. So this 60 around 60 kilometer of forest area has been devastated. Forest forested stretches up to the Jhabua district in Madhya Pradesh has been taken over on the presumption that these areas would be submerged under Garudeshwar and the Sardar Sarovar reservoirs. And the 60 kilometer of the 60 kilometer to the east of Rajpipla forest has been restricted. Similarly, in Jhabua district in Madhya Pradesh has taken over stretches of the forest on the presumption that these will be submerged in Sardar Sarovar and Gardeshwara reservoirs, and the local Bhil tribes who were practically dependent on these forests were literally shunned away from their abodes in Madhya Pradesh. From Madhya Pradesh, the wildlife has been utterly disrupted and the ecology was badly tampered with. This cutting down of the forest has disturbed the ecology or tempered the ecology badly. The different categories of the people alongside their occupation would be affected by the dam and its infrastructure. Landless laborers who stayed in the nearby village and made their ends meet by the mining sand collected from the riverbed would suffer a lot. So it will not only impact the forest area, it will not only this Sardar Sarovar ban didn't impacted only the tribals, it also impacted the landless laborers. These landless laborers stayed in the nearby village and they made their ends meet or they earn their livelihood by mining the sand. They collect the sand from the riverbeds, and because of the constructions of this Sardar Sarovar Dam, these landless labor suffered a lot. Villages like Bhilkhera were badly destroyed. Village shopkeepers, potters, and carpenters were badly affected. As the dams being built upon the Narmada, water channels were dramatically changed. The natural flow of water has been changed for the constructions of the dam or because of the constructions of these dams. Several affairs that were held regularly on the riverbank would have to be shut down, and this will impact, and this impacted, in fact, this impacted the livelihood of many people. Many tribal villages were getting submerged under the river, and the local inhabitants had no resort but to relocate themselves, often to very inhabitable sites. Because of construction of these dams, many villages were submerged, and the habitats of these or the locals of these villages were forced to take shelter at some other sites, and those sites are actually inhabitable. And these locals have already traveled to resettlement site there and experienced the misery. Waterlogged fields, no livestock, fragmented families, hostile neighbors, no commons to collect fuels and fodder. There sum up the experience of the most Adivasis. The Adivasis faced a lot of problems when they were um, dislocated from their land. And because of all these, the Nidha Patkar and other environmentalists opposed this Sardar Sarovar construction of Sardar Sarovar. But in the Prime Minister Narendra Modi on September 17 traveled to the Kevadia and inaugurated the Sardar Sarovar Dam on River Narmada on his 67th birthday. And Mr. Narendra Modi performed rituals on the bank of Narmada and offered flowers and prayers at the dam site before inauguration. Land-based movements or anti-mining movements. What are land-based movements? That as we all know that the precious minerals and stones like diamonds, gold, iron, copper, zinc, lead, ores were mined in the different parts of the India. And one of the primary requirements of the mining industry has constantly been ensured the supply of adequate manpower, and mostly the unskilled and the local laborers. In order to curtail the cost of production and escape the liabilities of mining population, workers were not only underpaid but even deprived of all legal benefit by the mining companies. These ores are very important, plays a very important role, and the mining companies for to mine these resources from the land, they need uninterrupted manpower, supply of the manpower, and that's to unskilled and uneducated manpower, so that they can escape from the liabilities of the this working population. And this working population or the laborers who work in these mines are actually underpaid, and they are deprived from the benefits by the mining companies. This has been done by the mining companies to curtail the cost of their production or to increase their profits. These nullified the contract signed with the worker, thus making them jobless and compelling them to return back to their home far before they attain their retirement age. And these companies do all these things in a way that the workers were forced to, compelled to work in the same existing condition. They cannot question, or they cannot raise their voice for their, to change their conditions or for their rights. And these company, they the private corporation and the state working in close association to spark these land-based movement. Actually, the state, these private corporations are state-sponsored corporations. The state and the private corporation work together in close association, and this close association played a very important role in sparking the land-based movements. A rich land of the bauxite in Kashipur block of Odisha was posing serious threat to the homes and livelihoods of the tribal inhabitants. The state had tactically clouded with the multinationals to extract the minerals from this tribal hinterland, leading to the loss of the land and occupation of the poor tribes. In Odisha, the bauxite. In Odisha, there is a rich bauxite land in the Kashipur block of the Odisha, and the state. Uh, Associated with the multinationals to extract the mineral, bauxite mineral from this land, and this impacted the livelihood and the local inhabitants. The Utkal Alumina International (UAIL), a, cons- a consortium of Norsec Hydro of Norway, Company of the Norway, Alcan of Canada, and Indel of India, had been trying to initiate a project in Kashipur block of Raigad district from past several years. While disposing the chemical waste produced from the mining, dry the red mud stacking would generate a huge amount, about 150 tons of sodium hydroxide every day, which would be difficult to manage. It was anticipated that at least 11 villages on the downstream to the refinery, with total population of around 2,000, would be affected by this discharge. So the companies like UAIL, Alcon, and Indel, these were working on a project in the Kashipur from past several years, and while they were disposing their chemical waste produced from the mining in from the mining, and they were disposing this in like this only. And this waste, actually this waste generate around 150 tons of sodium hydroxide every day, and it is very difficult to manage this waste. And this has impacted the 11 villages of the downstream. The major land movements around mining in our country, and the first movement is the oil refinery movement, 1956-57. The post-independence India, the first major exploration of the oil field in India, began in Naharkatia. This new oil field in northeastern Assam was expected to support a large production, which would be able to supply a third of the country's requirement of the oil. The Assam Oil Corporation recommended a building of a new refinery at Calcutta, whereas the government of India suggested Dhulburi in Assam and Barauni in Bihar as a possible sites of the refinery. The resolution to establish a refinery in Assam was mooted in a Legislative Assembly on 3rd April 1956, but unfortunately the central government could not give any definite assurance. And the Assam saw the government's move as being influenced by the British oil interest, because the central government was more interested to set up a refinery in Barauni rather than in Calcutta. And the Assam government and the Assamese and the Assam saw this movement of the government that is influenced by the British oil interest. And by June 1957, the Indian government had already decided to set up a refinery in Baroni, in spite of demand of Assamese people. And this led to a this led to the further political outburst in Assam, and this decision was responsible for the political outburst. And the first furious protest for the refinery in Assam took place on 28th of August 1956, and the movement was jointly initiated by the leadership of opposition party and chairperson of all Assam Refinery Action Committee. Strike, public meetings, and road marches were organized to register the gravity of the protest. The central government didn't bend before the hardcore public protest but decided to establish a refinery in Baroni by an outright ignorance of regional demand of Assamese people. So, central government outlooked the public protest or the demand of the people. And this led to the political outburst in Assam, and this promoted that all Assam Oil Refinery Action Committee to perpetuate the movement by staging a satyagraha from 14th August, especially in the area around the oil field and Shillong, as well as in the other districts. So this was the first land-based movement. The second was uranium mining and the social movement in Meghalaya in 1970s and 80s. Mining uranium in the West Khasi Hills of Meghalaya had generated a strong grievances and antipathy amongst its indigenous people. The state-owned Uranium Corporation of India and had repeatedly been denied access to these mineral-rich belt of the Meghalaya because of strong local opposition. People opposed the mining of the uranium in Meghalaya. The Meghalayan people opposed this mining of uranium, and the headstrong opposition to uranium mining in Meghalaya and the people's movement it got different dimensions of protest. It was not just a matter of ecological and environmental blunder, but also the issue of their ethnic sovereignty that guards the communal living from the external encroachment. And they opposed the extraction of the uranium not just to save the ecological and environment, but also to save their ethnicity and to guard their communal livings. So this was another type of a land-based movement. The next land-based movement is the movement against the POSCO for steel mining in Orissa from 2005 to 2017, the most recent one. With the liberalization and decentralization of our economy, there was a witness of an influx of many transitional corporations. Kalinga Nagar in Jaipur district of Odisha had become the hotbed of commercial interest owing to its nearness of the iron ore mine. And the Jaipur district of Odisha, there were the iron ore mines, and this was creating a rift of distrust among the local tribe who began resisting the land acquisition by the mining corporation in the first phase of the 2000s. Because of the iron ores in this district, these corporations started owning taking the lands or um, acquiring the lands, and the people of the district and the local resisted this acquisition of the lands in 2000s. On January 2nd, 2016, 13 Adivasis were gunned down by the Orissa police for opposing Tata Steels. They opposed the Tata Steel, and for opposing this, on January 2nd, 2006, 13 Adivasis were gunned down, and the movement has thus taken off with zest and force, but it could do so with full force. We will discuss this POSCO movement in our next lecture. That's all for today. Thank you very much. Namaskar.